So, Justice Duffy, could you share with us some of your experiences with family law matters in your private practice, in the mediation field, and as a judge?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Leo. I was in private practice in the law for many years and did mediation and arbitration as well, and then was on the bench as a judge for 9 years, and now I'm back doing mediation and arbitrations, which I dearly love. But I've had a lot of experience with family problems that arise out of elderly care in particular in that. And it's usually, almost every time, it's been a situation where there's been no advance planning, an emergency situation has presented itself. And that generally results in a nightmare and frequently tearing apart of the family involved. And I think there are 3 reasons for that. And one is emotions run very high in an emergency situation. 2, there is no time to carefully investigate and consider and evaluate what realistic options there are for the family in the situation. And 3, frequently there are very different opinions that each family member has as to how the emergency situation should be met, whether it's medical needs or financial, or whatever the situation is, and who should be responsible for meeting them, whether it's a living situation or financial responsibility or whatever. So it's just a bad situation when people talk for the first time, perhaps, about the needs of the kupuna. And that really is a sad situation. I think most families are into avoidance. I mean, they really don't want to talk about sensitive issues, and end-of-life care issues are certainly a sensitive issue in that. So each person might have their own independent views as far as what their mother or father or brother or sister feels about the end-of-life care issues and financial responsibility. And that's a bad time in an emergency to be talking about that for the first time. The die has been cast when there is the emergency situation and they haven't had a plan before that.
Well, what happens in those type of situations? Elder themselves.
Sure. To me, that's a truly unfortunate situation. Many times what the elderly person wants is really never discussed openly with the person. I think we're all pretty good about family avoidance issues in that, and end-of-life care issues are just very touchy for most families to get into. If they might feel it's kind of botchy, that maybe they're sending the person on their way earlier by talking about this, but that's why I so much believe in the program that the Mediation Center has to try and avoid this nightmare and plan for the future.
So let's separate out and say, okay, so you have litigation, you have family conferencing. How would you describe the difference between those?
Litigation, I guess, is the last resort, I would say, and that's something to be avoided if at all possible. So to me, the family conferencing is the most valuable thing any family can do. It just, these problems are going to be there whether you address them or not, but if you address them early on, you really can buy family peace of mind. And there's no price tag on that. When everybody has a chance to air what they feel the need should be and how it's going to be taken care of, I think there's a sense of peace that comes to the family group that, you know, they can live the rest of the kupuna's life and their lives in peace, and in a sense of enrichment of the remaining years, in that if there's a plan in place so everybody knows what's going to happen and not keep avoiding it.
So in the context of family conferencing, is there room for conflict, or is that a barrier to family conference?
Well, I think conflict is inevitable. It's a question of how you handle the conflict. I think everybody who participates has to be aware of the fact that they have their own view of the family situation, and they're certainly entitled to that, but that they might have to set at least part of that aside for the common good of solving the needs of the Kupuna as life goes on in their remaining years in that. So everybody should definitely have their say, and they definitely can, have conflicting views. The issue to me is how you handle those conflicting views, and that's why, with the aid of an independent mediator or person, maybe it's not a mediator, but an independent, impartial person who's participating, they can lead the discussion in such a way that nobody is condemned for having a different view, but at least if the person who has a different view has the feeling that they've been heard and understood. But then at some point there's got to be a consensus as far as what family plan is going to result from the conference.
So it is an outsider,
Yes.
but not an advocate.
Yes, absolutely not.
So that's really one very, very big difference between involvement in an outsider in an issue related to family in the context of litigation and family conferencing. The facilitator is an impartial, neutral, who has to take into account the views of all the parties and give them voice, give them the ability to have voice in the discussion without advocating of one position over another. Is that a fair way of differentiating the outsider participation in the context of family conferencing versus litigation?
Yes, very much so. I think if it were the converse, if a mediator, so to speak, chose sides or indicated favoritism for one individual over the other, I think that really defeats the purpose of coming to a family plan consensus in that. I mean, everybody may have different views, and it's some point the family might turn to that mediator and say, well, what do you think? But I don't think a mediator would ever put their 2 cents in before they're asked that question, because you don't want to risk losing the audience, so to speak, either by jumping in. This is not a win-lose situation. Hopefully this is a win-win situation for the entire family, but that doesn't mean it's easy to achieve.
And so when you talk about a family plan, what are the kinds of things that can be put together and put into a family plan?
Well, there are many things in that, but that really is what I like about the situation is there are no two family plans that are alike. They're unique. They have to consider the needs of the Kupuna in this particular situation and the needs of the family. There has to be some meeting of the mind as far as what is the ideal situation, but maybe what is practical and what is realistic as well. So you get into the basic needs of, what happens when the Kupuna should not be driving?
Mm-hmm.
How do we handle that situation? Is he or she able to live independently? How do we handle that situation? Who's going to pay for whatever care is necessary? Who's going to be the person in the family responsible for contacting the doctors and having a relationship with the doctors as well, so that there's a cohesive medical understanding of family members as well, as far as what the doctors are saying in that. So it really involves every fabric of human life. I mean, who's going to do the shopping if they're continuing to live independently or with the caregiver? Who gives the caregiver relief? And it's just kind of taking life down to the very basic elements and then figuring out what are the needs and who's going to be responsible for them.
What kind of preparation is undertaken or recommended or suggested two people coming to a family conference?
Well, I'm sure there are all kinds of things, but to me it's something you said earlier, Leo, that has struck a bell with me, and that's that most people come to the conference with some views that are based upon what's happened the last umpteen years in their family history, and that they don't come with a pure, open mind about issues. They come with some baggage of whatever sorts in that, and I think the best preparation would be to come with an open mind, aware of that, of how they feel, but also aware of other family members might feel differently about that. So come willing to hear different views and objectively consider them in coming to some sort of consensus. It's not a situation where you want people coming in with a predetermined view of this is what's going to happen and my way or the highway type of thing. It's got to be more willingness to talk things over and work things out for the common good. So I would say that's the absolute best preparation. So I think most people, going back a little bit, there are many family hurts that happen along the way, and sometimes people don't even realize that there's been a family hurt to some member, but that member sure remembers.
Absolutely.
And and might seek to even things up in the family conference and that. And I think you have to be aware of dealing with people. That's just life, and that it's not pleasant, but it's realistic, and you have to be aware of that. So I would say come with as open a mind as you can.
We've been sitting here and discussing this. Certain take-homes for ourselves, given the fact that we are in that category of being elders. What are some of the take-homes that you've gotten out of thinking about and dealing with this discussion?
Well, I have to say, having dealt with these family issues for about 50 years now, I'm really taking it to heart. I plan on having my own family plan for myself and my family. And I would urge you folks to consider having one also. I don't think you can put a price tag on the family peace of mind that having a plan provides. And I fully intend to have one, so.
Amen.
Amen. Mahalo and aloha.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah.